Here we are again with Dr. James Moss here on the Spiritual Quest. And we are again diving in deeper into the 5D perspective, the 5D perception, this whole new world that is emerging in rapid succession. And if you explore 5D consciousness on YouTube, or explore 5D consciousness in Chat GPT, or just explore that spiritual concepts of enlightenment, of the Buddha, of Christ consciousness, we call that 5D perception. And it's not exclusive to anybody. You are at 5D. We are all at 5D. The only thing that many of us have yet to do, we've yet to focus it in. We've yet to focus in what being in 5D means. So, being in 5D is a perception. It's not a thing. It's understanding. It's seeing. And it's seeing the whole, the wholeness, the whole of everything. And it sounds so simple, and yet it's profound. It is simple, and it is profound, and it is extremely beneficial and satisfying once we discover that. So, Dr. Moss, glad to have you back, and you're continuing to work with me on this, and hopefully we can continue this going indefinitely as your circumstances change and our circumstances change, that this new 5D energy movement or concepts can begin to expand out, and we can hopefully continue to gain more and more understanding and share it with those listening.
John, I think we have an opportunity now, this new era coming in, to unfold and unpack a lot of things, to create a new awareness all around us. So not really create, not so much as actually doing something about it, but allow and become aware and just sort of surf the waters, so to speak, but to find a new balance in things and help a lot of people along the way. Because people are, it's just as with this, the information era that's come about, it's hard to handle and process all this information, all this overflow of ideas and an opening. It's akin to being at the beach and watching these waves come in and being able to stand there. And when you get blasted with one in the chest, hard to stand after that. They usually knock you over, bowl you over like the bowling pins fall down. Too much information, too much stuff hitting you at one time. But it's a new era, and it's a lot to process. And when all of it hits you at one time, it's sort of new. It overwhelms you at first. So it's hard to kind of sort it all out. But we need to be open. I think of this. The first thought that popped in my mind is having a full cup of coffee. And it's been with you for a while. You can imagine someone coming up with a 20-year-old cup of coffee, how that might look and taste and smell. If you know what it is, you don't really want to take a sip of it. But they haven't poured it out so you can get a new, fresh cup. And in order for them to get a new, fresh cup of all of this wonderful thing, to get the new stuff, you got to pour out the old cup. But sometimes we're so full of ourselves. And we have all of this knowledge and everything else. And it might be that, hey, we think about it. Well, I graduated in, in the 70s or the late 60s and maybe the 80s and 90s. And I think I know everything. And now we got this new technology and all of this. And I don't need to know anything more. I know everything I need to know. Well, now we're getting epiphanies. We're getting new, technologies here, and it's helped us to do wonderful things now. And we don't know everything. Now we find new and innovative ways of doing things, and now things are here that can change our lives, and we don't have to struggle of it as we did in the past but we don't know everything. And it's hard to pull that old information out and receive something new. And it's hard to deal with the overwhelming things that used to inundate us. And now we have quicker, faster, easier ways of learning and doing things. And like you mentioned, Chat GPT and AI, and now supercomputers are creating this technology faster than we can think about it. In just a few minutes, when it used to take us days, weeks, months to create and think about, we had to go away, take sabbaticals, and think about new ideas and thoughts, and take weeks to write and get new ideas. And now with a computer-assisted technology, we can do it in seconds.
Right.
So that can help us as a tool if we allow it, but we sort of enable ourselves if we don't change our way of thinking and create the balance, because it can overwhelm us.
So in the 5D, and I appreciate those thoughts that you're sharing, and we talk about what we think and what we read and what we know, and within our spiritual center, we're trying to understand our world. We all want to know what's true. We all want to know what's right. We don't explore something and do a bunch of research to find out what's wrong. But sometimes stuff just gets handed to us and we're told that this is the way it is. Do you know that you live on a spinning ball that's spinning 1,000 miles an hour in outer space against a vacuum? And yes, of course, because that's what we believe, and we never even dared to question it. So I had the conversation with the flat earther, and he got me to agree that water is level on the surface. And he could, and I agreed. And I know that to be true. It's not something that I've studied that I know. I know that water is level on the surface, whether it's in a pond, in a pool, in a lake, or in an ocean. Water is level on the surface. I know that. So after talking to this guy, I started to look for the curve. I've been on plains, I've been to the top of mountains. Everything I look at, there is no place ever that ever would indicate to me that I'm on a spinning ball. So I know that in my core. Wow, how scary was it for me to challenge that belief that I had inherited? And as soon as I started to inquire, and the reason I inquired was because the gentleman I was talking to, I wanted to fix him so that he could come to the correct understanding of knowing that we're living on a spinning ball and we're spinning in outer space, and we have pictures from out there and we can tell exactly where we're living. And when I actually started to look at contrasting information to kind of present the logic and the reasoning behind the ideas of the globe belief that we're in a spinning ball, I started to realize how bankrupt and how weak the arguments were. And yet the passion and the intensity with which the arguments against what I know to be true are. And there's an energy in that. And so when I first start doing that, I'm afraid. I'm afraid to create that conflict. So I know what my truth is. I know that water is level, and I know that I live on a flat, non-rotating planet, right?
Right.
But knowing that everybody else feels that way, and everyone in my group feels that way, because they're all scientists and they're all, into the indoctrination, and they believe it. And I said, that's a religious belief. And I didn't realize how shallow that understanding really is, and yet how powerful it is. And what's the spiritual energy that creates such power into something that is so clearly illusion? It's an illusion, like it's just nonsense.
I think that one key thing you said, John, and it's often overlooked by a lot of people. It's just it's a wordplay, and in knowledge and belief, and a lot of people believe in fact checking until the knowledge is unfolded, and knowledge is ever changing because the truth unfolds. We don't know what we thought we knew until evolution or time unfolds this stuff, and then all of a sudden it changes all the facts. Example of what I'm talking about, there were archaeological digs from the 20s and 30s, went down maybe a couple of 100 feet. And, people were talking about archaeological finds were this metamorphic rock and then sedimentary rock, and then talking about the different things that they found at different levels, and they were marking it and pacing it off. And then they found something that was really unusual when they carbon dated it, and, with the most scientific methods they were using. They found this stuff to be older, 100,000 years older. And these little mechanical things that when they dusted them off and cleaned them off with the chemicals they were using, it almost looked like something you would find in a fine watchmaker's watch. When people used to carry pocket watches, and they said, well, this could be equivalent to a sextant that a sailor would use to navigate the stars. Something, what's it doing there? And it's a couple of 100,000 years older than anything in this era that we found. Well, maybe we were visited by ancient aliens or something. What's it doing there? Did somebody plant this there? Or what's this thing? Is it authentic? So this just baffles the minds. So we believe one thing for a while, and then all of a sudden, now we know there's something that throws everything off. All our beliefs are just thrown out of whack. Or BBC did a documentary in the Arctic where Admiral Byrd was supposed to, in the 30s, or he called the Seventh Fleet, and he talked about flat Earth. They found an ocean under the ocean. They found species that they tested the waters, and we don't know about species of fish and plankton and life that we had no knowledge of. And they even saw hominids, or what we would call Bigfoot over here in Alaska, and places where they have sightings of the huge 7-8 foot
giants. Yeah.
Right.
So what's interesting on that, and you can go down that rabbit hole. And to me, as with everything, most everything in our world is a matrix, and it's an illusion. And what do we know?
Right.
And what I know that water is wet. I know that water is level on its surface. I know what it feels like to be in a spinning environment. I know these things. So to try to talk me out of what I know is mysticism. It's a lie. So there's obviously lots of information that we have no clue about. And I don't know if you've seen some of these ancient world documentaries where, you go out and you look at the detail and the ornate constructions that exist in what was called the old Tartaria area. Or you look at these old buildings. And it could just be, you can go in many places, even in this country, you go down and you can see these beautiful cathedrals that were built. And so power tools were invented in the 1800s, or so we're told. So those buildings were built before we had any what we would consider modern day tools. So what I know from my experience is I can physically see this particular thing, and I can touch it, and I can sense it, and it exists, and there it is. You hear this a lot about the pyramids, and you say, wow, isn't it amazing that this pyramid is here? But if you look at that pyramid, it kind of looks old. You know what I mean? And it feels as if, well, if we did it with modern technology and we had the latest lasers or whatever, that we could make the same instruction, but it would look like it looks like on a piece of, on a drawing. Everything would be tight and clean. Right. But when you look at the ornamentation in these buildings that were built in the 1600s and the 1700s, and they are all over the planet.
Right.
They're not unique to one specific area. There is way, way, way more sophisticated information and knowledge that we do not have access to.
And even languages. And you can't, the maps have gone. Did you notice that? In the era today, you can't find the old maps that describe these places. They're gone.
Well, they in many places they are removed and deleted, and they're blocked. But that stuff is now being collected, and it's being shared. And a lot of this stuff was being blocked on YouTube, and a lot of this stuff was being blocked by the scientists who want to keep the scientism narrative going. and it's still a palpable, powerful narrative. But those who are in the truther community, those who are in the truther space, and we're saying, okay, well, these things exist. And when you look at any map, and there's no map that's pure. So you can say, oh, well, we have a pure maps because we're up in satellites and we take pictures from that. Well, no matter what map you take, you're taking individual shots and you're putting them together to create a map. So much of our reality is ether. It's something. It's a spiritual thing. Like, we create a spiritual appreciation and a spiritual understanding, i.e., that I'm living on a spinning ball, and gravity somehow is able to keep an entire ocean, and water is very, very heavy, an entire ocean on the ground because the gravity is that strong, and yet I can raise my foot off the floor with almost no effort at all. So where's the gravity? So,
Right.
and so when you start asking these questions, like, the whole narratives, they start to fall apart. And when the arguments are held together with belittlement, with ignorant challenges, with nonsensical inquiry, and I say nonsensical in the sense that if you are clear-headed, and if you do see reality in front of you, and you're confident enough to ask the questions based on your own attainments. And I think about the scripture that says, God's invisible qualities are clearly seen from the world's creation onwards, so that they are inexcusable. That God has given us an understanding that we have because we are his offspring. We are part of this biological reality that we see around us all the time. What creates the illusion and what creates the matrix are narratives. We're
Exactly.
told something and we believe our narrative. And if you were raised in the Middle East, you're going to have a particular point of view about God, and you're going to recognize that you're an offspring of Abraham. And there's an entire Islamic faith built on that. You then have the Jewish traditions, which is the other side of the Abrahamic covenants with Abraham, and you have an entire Jewish or Israeli, or I don't even know what the term for that is.
Based on the Torah. Right.
From the
Right.
Torah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Christianity, which metamorphosized out of these things. And so in America, we have a Christianity, and out in China, you have Shintoism or Buddhism or whatever they are, Hinduism, all of these different ideologies, all of these different narratives, and all of these different concepts. They are all part of a picture that's created for us, and we live in that picture. Reality is in the now. It's right this second. And at this particular second, I know what I can know. And we walk away with what we truly know. I know that I breathe air. I know that. Mm-hmm. Now, someone can show you that you can breathe air out of a tank and you can in fact go underwater, right? But, and then that becomes something that now you have belief in and you have faith in, and you know that underwater, under these circumstances, you can survive. But you also know that if for some reason that tank goes away, or the oxygen is completed, or that your hardware to breathe it is broken, that could be life-threatening. So our ability to know everything only requires our willingness to ask the questions honestly, and to connect with our inner soul space. And I call that your heart center. Like, you know what truth is. You really do know that water is wet. You know that water is level on the surface. And you know that you're standing on a still planet. And if you're on the ocean, out on the ocean, and you're looking at a sunset or a sunrise, you can see a reflection on that water from the sun all the way to where you are standing. As far as your eye can see, there is no variation on that water at all. You take a light and you shine a light on a table, you'll see it go just like that. If you take a bowling ball and shine a light on it, you will not see it. You will only see the one dot. So those are, to me, scientific evidences of the fact that we're being lied to. I'm not a scientist. I don't make arguments. I don't make claims. I'm a truther, so I just want to know what truth is. So to me, our willingness to be the lone person to challenge the narrative, the person to stand up for what is true and what is right and what is just. And this is happening in a cultural phenomenon right now on our planet, because we're all, I call it the Tasmanian devil. I don't know if you've ever seen that little cartoon
Oh
where
yeah,
you got
Taz.
like, and it's just going crazy and everything is going nuts around it. That's the brains of us as humans trying to orchestrate and trying to understand our reality. When in fact, all we have to do is stop engaging with everything that's happening, take a deep breath and back up and say, what is really happening right now? Because all the crap that's happening right now in the world with the new administration and all the breakups and all the arguments and all the tensions and all the world tensions and all the fears and all the chaos, that's the Tasmanian devil that's spinning around you, and none of that is real. None of that is really affecting you today. Now, it may be that down the road, changes may affect you, and in which case you'll deal with those when they actually affect you. But prior to that, for you to start putting your eyes and to start focusing on this chaos, you will literally be suffering from depression and anxiety and worry and insanity. And by the way, I think that what that may actually manifest in young people is a condition called ADD. Because their attention deficit is because they cannot put their attention on anything because everything is moving too fast, and maybe that's an evolution that someday will be explained by some of these things. But so 5D is simply being in the place beyond the interactions and seeing the whole of it and trusting your own God-given senses to know what is true. That's 5D perception.
You know, John, you hit the nail on the head. I remember when I was in the military, when I was in the Air Force, I was a PJ, combat paramedic, and we were in Fort Benning for part of our training. You know, the training for us was a couple of years long, and even longer on the technical side. So we got to do like 2.5 years of just preparation at different bases, you know, stateside before they deployed us overseas. So at Fort Benning, we had drill sergeants who were pretty hard on us because we weren't Army or Rangers or Green Beret, but we had to train with them. We had to train with Marines, and we had to train with everybody who was Special Forces because we were Joint Forces Command. We were part of a different detachment. And so we were combat when Special Forces dialed 911, we rescued them. So basically doing, you know, in Fort Benning you have a big tower. And none of us knew how to parachute or how to do anything like that but to train you, the DIs, drill instructors, would push you to your limits. You're standing up there 80, 90-foot towers first, and then even higher ones, over 100-something feet. You go to the edge. So if you have a fear of heights, to get you past that, to get you to the edge and to almost push you, to make you jump. And you got a bungee, you got stuff attached to you so you won't really hurt yourself, but you got to get over your fear of falling or fear of heights in order to learn how to do this properly. And you to rappel down it a few times, get used to it. So, you know, training you, and I was someone they kind of picked on, but I eventually became the leader of the small elite group because we had to rescue people. Like I say, when Special Forces got pinned down or whatever, we had to go in and get them. And eventually doing a halo jump, I was the one who jumped out of the aircraft at a few miles high and everything without a chute. And they had to bring it to me. But I remember we went mentally over this stuff first. And I use the analogy like a porcupine in the balloon factory. So fear will engulf your mind, paralyze you first. In order to get over that fear, you have to reach a point where you come out of that 3D conflict or, you know, thing to kind of pull yourself into the 5D. It takes willpower to do it. You have to actually pull yourself back into a 5D perspective in order to see yourself there and willfully think, okay, I've got to move myself out of this space and I've got to be able to see what's going on It's like an accident happened in slow motion. You've got to be able to willfully do a few steps in order to get yourself out of harm's way in order to survive it. You know what I'm saying? You see it coming. And if you don't move, if you don't do anything, or you relax yourself in a martial arts situation, you can see the left side of a person's body, you can see the strike coming. To block it, it has to be an automatic reaction because it's happening so fast. And everything slows down for you to do that. But if you forget, you get hit. You know, first thing you learn in a dojo is how to fall, how to hit the mat properly so you won't hurt yourself. And in all that preparation from military, from in my own personal experiences, I'm saying that, but you can see how the 5D principles are applied. And in conflict resolution, and you find yourself there. Once you see yourself there, you get these little, what do you call them, moments of introspection, or some people call it deja vu. When you see yourself there, you get a quick glimpse like that, and you realize, oh my God, I'm right here. I saw this yesterday, and I saw this, and I knew I would be here. So now you move yourself, you realize, and you reposition yourself, and you almost have an opportunity to do this, and you can change everything around you by just letting go of the situation, diffusing it, and changing the whole paradigm. John?
So I completely understand that, and I want to talk about the spiritual energies behind that.
Mm-hmm.
So you think about what happens when a person is afraid. They immediately freeze up, and they want to get out of something, and they put all of their energies into avoiding the reality in which they're presented. And so we don't go to the end of cliffs because we know that potentially hurts us. But on the same token, we have exclusive military people who have accomplished these feats through their own life experience, and they've developed the ability to be able to recognize their own psyche, and they can recognize what fear is. And when we are afraid, we cannot think clearly. Mm-hmm. So the idea of fear is to break your spiritual continuity, to break your trust with your life and your reality, that you're kind of forcing yourself to step outside of your, and I'm going to call it your heart-mind relationship. So your heart knows that you don't want to go near the edge because you can fall over, right? But there's a higher part of you that says, I'm willing to take this because there's a need for this, and I need to be able to figure out how to do this. And therefore you face that fear, you overcome that challenge, and you meet that next perception within the reality of that, right?
Right.
So in our lives, most of the time, fear is an energy frequency that's flowing through our belly. We feel it as uncomfortable. We feel it as discomfort. We feel it as something bad. Well, whenever we feel anything that makes us feel that negative, 5D is to notice that feeling. To notice that feeling. Before anything else, notice that feeling coming up in your belly. Because it may be that you're driving down the road and all of a sudden you get like this nauseous feeling in your stomach and you say, what just happened? Because I felt this come up. But nothing seems to be wrong. Mm-hmm. But it was, you had driven by a McDonald's. And as a kid, you went to a McDonald's when you were a kid on your bicycle and you ended up getting beat up. So you have this historical precedent in your psyche that says McDonald's is a scary place. So you drive by a McDonald's totally unrelated to anything. You're not even consciously aware of it. But this little feeling comes up inside of your belly. 5D perception is to recognize that feeling coming up in your belly. You don't have to assign it to where it belongs. You don't have to say, well, that's because of the McDonald's restaurant. That's what you would call cognitive therapy. Right. You'd walk them through it and you'd explain why it's nonsensical. Mm-hmm. But in 5D, you don't have to explain anything. All you have to do is realize that I'm getting this inner spiritual sensation that's coming up inside of me of fear. But my conscious mind and my thought process can tell me I'm not in any danger right now. I'm in my own car and I'm comfortable where I am and there's nothing for me to be afraid of. So that feeling take a deep breath and feel that feeling. And I say, I love that feeling. And that feeling is welcome to come up inside of me whenever it needs to. And then you exhale it out and you let it go. You don't, if you push it away, it's like, oh, I'm getting this negative feeling, and you push it away and say, I don't want to feel that way. And then it's kind of like there's this little doubt. That little fear has been closed inside of a closet inside your brain. You've put it over there, and now you've shut the door on it. Well, that little fear is now in the closet, building and becoming more and more anxious. And every time you have a fear sensation, you end up assigning it to that room and to that closet.
Exactly.
And that closet becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's nothing in that closet.
Right.
There's nothing in that closet that has any influence other than to resonate a negative situation that puts you in 3D fear, which makes you uncomfortable and unhealthy. You're living in an environment you're not living within the reality of the situation. You're living within the matrix of your own fears that you've built up in your lifetime, and whatever they are. So the way to come to 5D is to recognize your own inner states and feel them. Just feel it. I can feel that I'm jealous. Why am I jealous? I don't know why I'm jealous. I don't need to be jealous. I love the fact that these feelings come up inside of me. I acknowledge that this feeling is here, and I'm going to feel it. Where do you feel it? I notice I feel it in my lower back. I notice I feel it in my temples. I feel it in my throat. Wherever you feel it, just notice that you're feeling it. And start to become mindful of all of these inner spiritual sensations, because that's the spiritual quest, is to understand that those are spiritual elements. They're not tied to a physical experience. When they are tied to a physical experience, yes, the spiritual sensations are the same, but your mind connects it to the reality that you're in. And when you're in a seriously dangerous situation, you will come to a clear, focused attention, because you're in the now, you're in the now moment, you're feeling all those fear sensations, you're acknowledging that they're there, and your physical reality is validating that they're there, and you become super conscious and you become super aware, and you're very much in control. And this happens to people in emergencies. Most people, when things really become chaotic, and you think, everyone is going so crazy, everyone's going so crazy, and everyone's freaking out. But when something really happens that you really have to freak out about, all of a sudden everyone becomes still.
Right.
Everyone kind of becomes confident, and everyone plays their role. So the leader steps up, and the nurse steps up, and the friend steps up,
Right.
and the support staff steps up, and we all play our role, and whatever role that is. And that is 5D perception. And that happens in rare instances, and I think that's one of the reasons that people love extreme sports, because it brings them to this high energy of their own life, but they're consciously living that moment on the edge,
Right.
and they risk the potential fall. But the endorphin rush after the fact is off the charts. And while we can talk about these spiritual energies in a scientific matter, we can talk about how the chemicals flow, we can talk about what our thought process is, we can talk about our histories and how we got there. All of the narratives are just that. They're just stories, and we all have our stories. 5D is just recognizing that all of these feelings, all of these things that happen within me, and all of these experiences are just spiritual sensations inside of me. They don't have any control over me other than the power that we assign it. So I start to get afraid. I want to hide my fear, and before I know it, I'm sticking my fear in my closet. I know it's there. Now I'm super sensitive to fear everywhere I want to go. Pretty soon I don't want to go anywhere that can potentially bring me to my fear, and before I know it, I'm no longer living a life. I am now a prisoner in the matrix of my own making.
Exactly. I was having a conversation earlier that we'd spoken about, with a good dear friend, and she was very, very upset. And what you were talking about earlier about the first responders often have that situation. I encountered another situation at a flea market. Recently this happened last month. I was just walking with my caregiver, who happened to be a friend of mine as well, passed out. And we were just in a little rock and jewelry shop and gotten some jewelry from them. And I just felt a moment. I didn't even have kind of warning, but I just passed out. And before I could even think about, sitting down, I was on the ground. you know, but everybody came to responded quickly, and the store owner, he was right there. I heard him say, "Well, I think he hit his head." And I'm just I'm in and out, or I've lost consciousness for maybe 15, 20 seconds. But I was on the ground, didn't know what happened to me. I'm sitting and lying, and I'm on the floor, and he's kind of cradling my head and everything. Somebody called 911, and these people are responding, coming from everywhere. I saw a crowd of people. I'm barely opening my eyes and everything. And the ambulance came, took me to the hospital, did a quick evaluation and everything. But they responded immediately. I went back a couple of weeks to thank them. But how quickly people went into motion, just like that.
Yes, and that's clarity. They have total focus. They're in 5D. They're right there with 100% attention, 100% acuity. All their senses are focused on this one situation. And while the fear is there, it's not. You're above the fear. You're beyond the fear. Like the fear is there, but it's like you are so focused in the moment, in the physical experience that you're having, that the fear is not really there. Right. And so once it goes away, then you go back and you say, wow, that was an amazing experience. That was terrifying.
Yes.
And then you go back and you define the experience. But when you're in the experience, truly in the experience, you don't even notice that.
No.
So, and what's happening today is how much of our world and how many of our fears are actually legitimate fears. Most of them are narratives that are perpetrated and pumped out at us from Facebook and social media.
Exactly,
and
because
every news
there's
channel,
so much
every
stuff
Twitter
we're
account, everything. Yeah.
all this garbage and everything that happens every day, and and I was talking, on the phone just earlier, a few hours ago, and just trying to listen, because initially I thought it was a real bad situation, but just talking to someone who was undergoing a lot of stress and pressure, and I understand what she was going through, but she was in a she's normally a 5D perspective person, but she was in a 3D mode, and allowing this stuff to really pressurize her and just get to her, and anger and all these things I heard, and I just listened in order to try to understand and empathize with where she was, and she listens to our podcast as they began, and she was calling me, and I just listened, and she was able to. I asked her to look in the mirror, and for a moment just look at yourself, and realize that you've been there for you since the very beginning. You'll always be there, and talk about empathy and love for yourself, and look in your eyes and see that person behind the windows of your soul. And the voice broke, kind of slowed down, and she began to realize, and all of that, the hatred, the things that, the negative thoughts expressing, it kind of all went away. And then a perspective, she regained the perspective, went back into a 5D perspective, and was able to see how this thing was destroying you. Because the same person you're looking at, John Dunson knows it, the same person, when you're looking at it could turn into your worst enemy.
It's true, and what's interesting is that, and in my book, The Spiritual Quest, that book is about us as individuals working on our own inner spiritual space and learning to become comfortable with ourselves, within ourselves, so we can become whole. And that's 5D perception. When you obtain the top of the mountain, you kind of have this comforted fact of being in balance, where you have heart and mind alliance, and everything is clear and concise. However, we still bounce through a world where we're constantly bumping into everybody else, and all the other anxieties and all the other fears, and all of those things are there, and they're pumped out at us through the TV, and they're pumped out at us, in a restaurant, if we're in an argument, at work, all these different things. And what's interesting is, as we individually kind of reach our own 5D perspective, and we find this inner place of peace, right? We also realize that we get constantly interacting with the world around us that's 3D. And so there's all kinds of dense energies there that can suck us back in. And we're constantly being sucked into that. And you and I have had lots of conversations,
yes,
as much
absolutely.
as we've had them here. When we have conversations, when we're not recording them, and,
Right.
we're a little bit more in exploring our way out there stuff. and how quickly we can return to 3D means of communication, and we catch ourselves doing it. It's like, oh, that's 3D. I know, and I feel myself doing this. I can't believe that I'm saying to you that that's wrong or that that's not the case, because the fact that you see it that way makes it the case.
Right.
And the fact that I don't see it that way doesn't make the way you see it wrong. But again, the same conflict that we do individually, as we get our own center and then we have to interact with others, we get sucked back to the 3D. That is what's happening to our society right now. Our society is collectively in a psychosis, in a collective craziness, because we realize that everything that we've been told is are lies, and there's lies upon lies, and there's groups of lies, and there's groups of liars, and there's and whatever we held to be as true, whether it was our religious beliefs or whether it was our doctor's permissions or whether it was medical science, every single thing that we thought we knew that creates the narrative of our reality is breaking apart. And our collective shadows are all being brought and bubbled forth to the surface. And it's easy to get sucked into the collective 3D. And that's where, there's a movement called MAGA, right? And you may find that you have, an absolute negative response to that. They call that the Trump derangement syndrome. I absolutely despise this. And that's an energy frequency that's tied to 3D. Or you may be on the other side and you're like, oh, MAGA, this is the answer to all of mankind's problems, and we've got this, and he's our hero, and this is what it is. And again, that's a narrative, and that's an energy frequency. Neither of those energy narratives are true beyond our willingness to buy into it. So I can say that, yes, and by the way, I would say, why not buy into any narrative in a way that you can do it in a positive way? And I would say the way to do that is through conversations, so that we can have the ability to be able to identify our needs, and we're able to also explore the needs of others, because our 5D perception is directly connected to our willingness to understand everybody else. So I always say 5D is to be able to look at every single point of view that's out there that disagrees with mine, and put myself in the shoes of the person who has a disagreement with mine, and say, what is it that they're feeling, and why do they feel that way? And what's great is, if you have people who are willing to be honest and communicate, you can ask them those questions. Why is it that you hate Trump so much? What is it about him that makes it so dangerous? Why do you love Donald Trump so much? What is it about him that makes you so excited? And regardless of where you come down in the narrative, it doesn't matter, because the narrative includes all points of view. So that includes every single person on the planet, right? So people who are not even in America are worried about this phenomena called MAGA, right? Our willingness to be able to look at ourselves through the eyes of everyone else. So how does the left political party view me? How does the right political party view me? How does the liberal party view me? How does the religious community view me? How do my Christians view me? How do my Mormon friends view me? How do my Jehovah's Witness friends view me? How do the scientists view me? How do the flat earthers view me? How do my musician buddies view me? How do my athletic friends view me? And every single community and every single group and every single person on this planet has got a personal point of view. Most of those points of view are also attached to a group. So you've got your athletes attached to sports. You've got your religious people attached to God. You've got your science people attached to science. When we can see ourselves through everybody else's eyes, wow, does our vision expand. We come to 5D, and we start to see the way the rest of the world sees us. And it's no longer me trying to defend myself or me trying to make my point. All of a sudden, I am this tiny little nothingness. I'm nothing, because I'm seeing it within its entirety. That's awareness. That's 5D. That's Christ consciousness. That's the enlightenment. It's not a destination. It's a breathing process. You breathe in the enlightenment, you exhale the 3D. You breathe in 5D, you exhale 3D. You breathe in 3D, you exhale 5D. Like, and there isn't like a destination here. It's just recognizing that phenomena, and I call that 5D or enlightenment. Are you at 5D yet? You're invited. All right. Talk to me, James.
It's wonderful, wonderful,
So
John.
we're down to like our last 15 minutes, and I know I got on a little wandering spree, but I'll let the audience know that we had a nature call that was required to leave me alone in the studio for a short time.
Well,
But James is back now.
it's a wonderful. You described it wonderfully, though. It's an entity all its own. It takes on a life of its own because it's hard to describe in words. It goes beyond that, as you mentioned, because it takes you in and out of the human realm, let's say, and gets you into the spiritual realm where words don't do it justice because it has a life of its own. And then you get into a whole new meaning of things, wherein we try to humanize so many things that we don't have words for. And it's like finding new things that the languages, we don't understand the languages because we don't know about that civilization.
Give me a word like that, James, and how do we determine those things? Can you do that?
A word like that?
Yeah, like can you think of something? We talked earlier today about, what is 5D? Give me another word for 5D.
Well, there are many, many words that basically used to describe it, but they're essences of God or
Essence of God, okay.
right.
What
And
else?
I would say universal presence or universal existence,
Presence, universal existence,
omnipresence, or
omnipresence.
things that basically awareness would be an entity all its own. And these are things when you be able to transcend things. We talked about it. I described it, and we were talking about, recently, last March, had my surgery for pancreatic cancer. And, 16 hours I was in surgery. When I went through the transition, they were waking me up and putting me back into the room out of the surgical theater. It was a process, and getting back to a point where I could walk again and my organs were functioning and everything, for the several days, getting rid of the gas pains and making sure all the organs were working properly. It was a process. Being in the hospital for a few months and, just getting back to making sure, all of that was a transitional process. We transcend in and out of, because we were born, let's say, into this planet and went from a infancy stage going through childhood development, getting used to our bodies and getting used to, as you mentioned, this biological organism we're in, and functioning and using our senses and learning more about them and everything. And even if you lose a sense or two, say if you lose one of your eyes or your hearing or you lose a sense, you kind of make up for that sense. Or if you have all your faculties and you learn to use them to the maximum of their abilities that we learn, we were talking about the example, I was talking about the dojo example, learning martial arts at a young age. And my sensei teaching us how to use weaponry or swords as an extension of your body and being able to use that. But when you learn the lessons from that particular extension, in this case it was a sword, then you don't need the sword anymore because it's taught you the lessons. Your body, same way. Your teachers in class, you go through either formal education, informal education, whether it's been public school learning or private or whatever. We never stop learning. The people who want to, and some people, depending upon your willingness to learn. We talked earlier about, the cup being full. and people, reaching a level, I'm through with it. I don't want to learn anymore. I've learned as much as I want to know. I got plenty of common sense, and
I don't need to know that. That's
Right.
their answer. I don't need to know that.
Right. Well, I got Google, or, know everything. I don't need to know from you. You're old school. Hey, we set up a foundation. If we hadn't done that, you wouldn't know what you know now. Right? All of this, and people, the generational gaps and things like that. But when we open our hearts in love and allow for mutual understanding, or allow the empathy and empathize with a person's situations, like it was on the phone with a young lady there, we can understand and we can actually experience a different kind of, and it breaks through a lot of that negativity. It breaks through a lot of that stuff that piles up every day. If we don't clean that, the filters, the things that, because it fills up our memory with negative stuff, and we can't. It's like your kidneys. You need to flush. You need to do a cleanse every now and then in order for your system to work right.
A spiritual cleanse.
It's a cleansing.
The 5D cleanse.
It's a cleansing. Absolutely. Yeah. In order for things to function right, because if you don't, you become toxic, and the toxic world will affect you.
Right. And most of the time, it's not that we become toxic, it's that we live in a toxic environment and we're not cleansing. We're first of all, number one, be mindful of the fact that I'm in a toxic environment. Mm-hmm. So, and the way we notice that, this is 5D. You notice you're in a toxic environment by how you feel. I can tell when I'm around certain people, I feel a certain way, and that certain way I'm feeling is not pleasant. So that's an indication. By the way, it doesn't necessarily mean it's attached to those people. It's attached to something inside of you. There's something inside of you that's causing you to be depressed. There's something inside of you that causes you to be uncomfortable. There's something inside of you that causes you to be jealous. And there's something inside of you that makes you feel great. And there's something inside of you that makes you feel loving and kind and generous and joyful. These are all spiritual conditions that we recognize from a 5D perception, as we recognize and we say, they're all a part of me. So which part of me do I want to live in? Like which part of the world do I want to... You can put on a pair of glasses and you can see the world through 5D glasses, which is love and light and awareness and consciousness, and caring and kindness and joy and peacefulness, right? And enlightenment and stability and calmness. And the list goes on and on and on, because each specific word carries a spiritual meaning to it that's bigger than the word. And that's why 5D consciousness, that full awareness, is way bigger than we are as our egos. Mm-hmm. And I heard an interesting presentation here the other day about putting deposits into our spiritual bank.
Yes, absolutely. They carry positive connotations.
How much? So what kind of bank, what contributions do you make to the bank of your spiritual life? Mm-hmm. What do I say to myself in the morning? Oh, I got a headache. Oh, it's a Monday morning. I can't do this. Mm-hmm. Oh, I can't believe this. Oh, that happened. I can't. I don't want to do that. No, can't, won't. These are all constricting. Mm-hmm. They're not freeing. They're not 5D. They're the 3D matrix. And everything in the 3D matrix is controlled by the yes and the no. Mm-hmm. So you can't feel good about something unless you decide that this feels good. And I can say, wow, I got this feeling in my stomach. I saw my old boyfriend. Okay. Or I saw my old girlfriend, I guess. Whatever it is, a feeling comes up. And maybe it's a negative one. Maybe it's a positive one. Maybe you haven't really decided. Ooh, that was kind of weird. Ooh, I hadn't seen him in a long time. Like, that kind of felt weird. Well, what does it feel like?
Right.
How do I want to define that for myself? Am I going to be uncomfortable with this feeling? Why would I be uncomfortable with a feeling that comes up with inside of me? Because whatever comes up inside of you is a part of you. So learn to love what's inside of you. Learn to love the negative aspects of things. And that's how in spirituality, you talk about the alchemy. So you can take fear and you can alchemize fear by wrapping yourself in the fear and feeling the fear and then repurposing that fear into courage.
Exactly. Like we talked about earlier. I mean, I described those experiences because the drill instructors had to take us and remold us and reshape the way we saw things. Because if you see it as an obstacle, obstacles are the things that pop up when you lose sight of your goals. You're going to see something else now, and you're not going to like it because fear is false evidence appearing real, and it's going to fool you. It can be accomplished, but now you've got blockades instead of it, and those are the things that hold you back.
And collectively, the 5D perception, I feel as if now the bigger narrative is beyond us as individuals coming to our 5D perceptions, and also to recognize that collectively we are coming to a higher degree, and that we're no longer as a collective being able to put up with dishonesty. Like the dishonesty that's taken place in government and the dishonesty that's taken place in the food industry and the drugs and the medicine and the false narratives around NASA and going to the moon or living on a spinning ball in outer space. All of these narratives carry spiritual energies. And how do those spiritual energies feed us? How do they feel within our belly? Well, first and foremost, if you want to stop a feeling from coming up because you say, I don't want to know that, I don't need to know that, none of that matters, I don't care, that has nothing to do with me, those are all 3D manifestations of being constricted. I'm not willing to listen to something that disagrees with me. That's nonsense. Well, if it's nonsense, it's not nonsense to the person who's making that presentation. So try to understand where that presentation is coming from. Try to resonate with that frequency, with that person, with that culture, with that community, with that idea, with that ideology, right? And we may not like something, but at least try to understand and acknowledge how that feels to the person who is a proponent of that particular idea or that particular concept. Because the more open we become and the more willing we are to listen to everybody, the quicker we're going to be able to solve a lot of problems, because we're going to stop our fighting about which is the correct path out of this, and we put all of our energies into what if. Let's see this, and what if we do this? Oh, and what if we do that? Oh, and we could add this, and we could add that. And we start looking at things from the idea of expansion and accomplishments and possibilities, and we pursue down the path of positive 5D perception.
Totally agree, John, because if we've got the buy-in of everyone, then people feel like, hey, I contributed something to that, and now they're more willing to do something about it. Now you've got the buy-in of everybody, and everybody's willing to do something, and you don't have people sitting back lackadaisical saying, well, it's their solution. They let them do it. They want to participate. Now everybody has an equal role.
Amen, brother. And unfortunately, we are out of time, but this has been a super conversation. I'm grateful that you spent this time with me again, James, and I will continue to do this. And we welcome inquiries, we welcome comments, and we welcome future guests who, particularly those who know 5D, those who know who they are, they know what's true, they know their reality. We would love to have you here.
Always
to
a pleasure
share
being
that
here,
with
John.
us.
Thank you.
All right, James, that wraps us up. Appreciate you being here, and let's make it a great year as we watch 5D unfold.